So I will just, yeah, Mary, you can go on, So you just let me know when I want to move from this particular screen.
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone. I'm Joy Sabal. So I'm Mary Joy Sabal, but you could call me Joy. So this is my first time gonna speak in Meetup. I know that I've been getting invites before, but it's just that I was busy doing the certifications. And I recently gave a talk in MuleSoft Connect in JPAC, but I have limited time um, that time, so I can't really expand the topic. But yeah, it's all right. Yeah, so I'm manufactured in Philippines, but I'm based in Auckland, New Zealand. So I've been in integration space for more than 3 years now. Yeah, so today or tonight, I'm gonna talk about using Maven Archetypes to create MuleSoft API project templates. Cool. So MuleSoft API project templates are great tools to help you with your integration projects. So throughout this presentation, I will provide tips for using Maven Archetypes to simplify the creation of these templates, as well as discuss the various benefits of doing so. So we will look at the technical challenges you might face, an example use case, and how you could leverage any point exchange in Maven. So I'll give demonstration at the end, and if you're interested, you could try it yourself. So to begin with, next slide, Jack, please. Cool. So yeah, I've got 9 years of IT experience and more than 3 years in integration space. I'm MuleSoft multi-certified developer for Mule 3 and Mule 4. I'm also certified platform architect and integration architect. And I've been doing development for like 10 years now. And yeah, I'm still enjoying it. I think it's a different fulfillment when you're doing development, even though you're started with design. I think it's a passion, it's a calling when you do development. So at the moment, I'm currently producing talented Mule developers. So here in New Zealand, we've few clients working with MuleSoft. So they are transitioning to become a Mule developer. So recently, I've applied for a Wellington, New Zealand Meetup group leader. So I'd like to take this opportunity to invite you guys to subscribe to our local group. And I'm in the process of planning the topic pipeline for next year. So it's going to be exciting. Yeah, fun fact. I think since I'm in Meetup in India, I could prepare chai. I think chai is, you know chai, right? So chai is part of my everyday life. And I'd love to eat Indian foods as well. And yeah, in my spare time, I do travel in New Zealand. I love nature. So if you're up with nature, then New Zealand is the best place to go. And yeah, so far I'm enjoying my life here. So yeah, that's for my introduction. So now, going back to the presentation, to begin with, let's take a look at real life scenarios in which using an API project template would be beneficial for your organization. So scenario is a new MuleSoft client needs help to upskill developers. In doing so, it requires a lot of time for each team or line of business in reviewing the MuleSoft project structure. More importantly, to enforce the best practices and technical governance. These are mainly the technical challenges during onboarding, and the process would be overwhelming for a new developer. So good example was my, well, it's still my client. They've been using Mule for almost a year now. So they came from .NET. And if you're gonna onboard like a lot of developers, you really need to plan like this, like a template. for them to follow. So yeah, another use case. Next slide, please, Jack. So as your application network grows, you will be building a lot of APIs within a short time frame. Each developer or team might have their own way of building APIs and has its own standard base structure of the project. So they may probably have to do a lot of copy and paste to have a consistent base structure of their API and configure its core dependencies all over again. So another scenario is a new Mule developer comes along and lands on the repositories page. If your project structure is a massive dump of files or a nested mess of directories, you might look elsewhere before even reading your beautiful documentation. So it will be confusing which project structure to follow without having a standard one in place. So to summarize the technical challenges, without having a standard API template. Next slide, please, Jack.
Yeah, I have seen the slide.
So it consumes a lot of development time, inconsistent project structures, and then unable to meet development standards and to follow technical governance in building API. Yep. Next slide, please. Cool. So before we start doing the step-by-step for doing the API project template, let's talk about first what is Maven and MuleSoft. I've been using Maven, I think, for 7 years now. So Maven is a dependency management utility that Mule implements to enhance project development. So it's equivalent to Gradle. So if you're familiar with Gradle, it's the same with, yeah, it's the same as Maven. So all new projects created in Anypoint Studio 7 and later are configured Maven by default. And one of its plugins is Maven Archetype. So Maven Archetypes, whose task is to create project structure as per its template from which all projects are created. So here, before we deep dive, I'll run you through a few common terms when dealing with Maven. So number one is POM. So project object model. So if you could see in your Mule project, there's a POM XML. So this is a fundamental unit of work in Maven. It is an XML file that contains all of your dependencies and then configuration details, munit test coverage. So this is where you declare the project dependencies. The second thing is the archetype descriptor. So the file is archetype metadata.xml. So this is the heart of metadata of the archetype project. So I'll talk more about this later on. And the third file that we're gonna cover is the archetype properties. So there are default properties or placeholders in the Maven archetype. So Maven archetypes, the underlying is the velocity engine. So they have reserved words, so like artifact ID, but you could introduce your custom placeholders that will really be helpful when you're building the API project template. So I'll show you that later on. All right. So next slide, please, Jack.
Yeah.
Cool. So now that we are familiar with the basics of Maven, here are the steps that we'll run through. So first, we're going to create a custom project, and then we'll upload the custom project as a template into Anypoint Exchange. But for being time conscious, let's pretend that it's already uploaded in Exchange. So we're just going to download it. And then Maven archetypes, there are lots of templates, but we're going to focus on the two commands. One is the create from project, and the other one is the generate. And then at the end, we will going to import to Anypoint Studio the newly generated project. Cool. Next slide, please, Jack.
Yes.
Yeah. So best practices in building project structure. The project structure for me is a crucial part as well, same as designing, building your pipelines. This is the core of your API. Like this is where your code, this is where you code. So first is under source main mule, we've got ideally 5 files here, 5 XMLs. So one is interface, implementation, and then common services, and then global configs, and then error handler. So the domain there in the implementation and interface, that is just a placeholder. So think about this as your custom project, and then once we run the command, we're gonna replace the domain with your desired name of the API. So in common services, by the name itself, we dump all the common flows, common subflows in that file. So your interface could be an API kit router. It could be, if it's an event driven, then you could put the entry point there as well in the interface. And then you're gonna encapsulate the logic in the implementation. So that's where your transformation comes in place, business validations and other stuff. So that would be the content of your source main mule. So I'll show you later on the details, more details about it. So in the global error handler, the best practice is to consolidate everything in one file. Why? Because maintenance-wise, you're just gonna touch one file, and it's easier to read, like it's clean to read, and how your flow gonna call that error handler. So you're just gonna reference it. So there's a way to do it. Yeah, and then second thing is the resources structure. So we've got here DWLs. So as you know, DWL is when you save your data weave transformation. It's a best practice as well to always save your data weave transformation, because you could use that on your MUnit later on. And then examples, schemas. So where you could put WSDL if you're dealing with SOAP web service. You could put JSON schema if you're dealing with REST. And then YAML files, we've got only one file, which is the local config.yaml. Why? Because other files, security best practice, we shouldn't put our higher environments YAML files inside the project. It should be injected by the pipeline. But I'm not going to tackle that thing. But yeah, we only need one file here. And then core dependencies, we've got here MUnit and MUnit tools. By default, it's not in Anypoint Studio. Secure properties for encrypting sensitive data. And then we've got JSON validation scheme as well, JSON module. And then you could use the JSON logger in Mule4, which is really cool. So you could put all your common dependencies that you will use across all your APIs. And best practice is to always update your dependencies version to the latest and greatest. So next thing is the core global configuration element. We've got Mule environment holder here. This is just to decrypt the local YAML. So the one that's gonna inject by the pipeline, it's for your higher environment YAMLs. So you have to externalize your higher environment YAMLs. And then, yeah, and then secure config properties. Next slide, please.
Yes.
Cool. So in our custom project, security as well, best practice, we should mask our Anypoint platform client secret. We should mask the Mule key. And if you are dealing with Splunk, if you're feeding your logs through external tools, then you could include the Splunk token here as well. So what's the benefit of this? Well, if you go to Runtime Manager, then you can't see this data. So this secure properties here in Mule artifact JSON actually mask it, and you could encrypt it as well. It's up to you. So there's a way to do that. So in our POM XML, you could introduce the munit test coverage in your POM XML. So in here, there's a fail build and then run coverage. So by default, you could set it to false, because if you didn't reach the application coverage, then it will fail. So once you're ready to run your coverage, then just swap it to true. And then last would be the Log4j configuration. So in our Log4j, we've got the rolling file here. So in our API project template, it's gonna change that automatically. And then you will have the appender for Cloud Hub. So if you're using a Cloud Hub deployment model, you could put that there. And if you're using Splunk, so you could fit the logs both to Splunk and both to Cloud Hub, then you could add it here in the Log4j queue. So those are the configurations you need for the Log4j. Next slide, please, Jack.
Yeah.
Cool. So Anypoint Exchange, one-stop shop for connectors. And you could publish templates as well. So in here, you could publish directly from Anypoint Studio, just tag it as a template, and then do your documentation there. So it's very handy, and other developers could download it here. So it's a collaboration. It's so if you want to do more changes as you go along the way, then you could publish it here. So if you really wanted to improve your API project template, then you could utilize the Anypoint Exchange. Cool. Next slide, please, Jack. All right. So our first Maven archetype is the create from project. So the photos or the snapshots that I've showed earlier, those are the content of your custom project. So think about this. Think about this as a template on top of a template. So in the archetype metadata.xml, so that's the skeleton of your API or Mule project. So in here, by default, Maven actually, when you generate a project, Maven doesn't include the empty directory. So you can see under source main resources, we've got DWL, examples, schemas. If those are empty, Maven won't include it on the generation. So we have to tweak a bit of configuration in archetype metadata.xml, which I'm going to show you later on. So I put the command there at the bottom. We're going to run that later. Okay. Next slide, please.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. And then the second command is the Archetype Generate. This is the common command that we normally run when we wanted to create a newly project. But it's just that our project is customized. So we need to add an extra step before we generate a project. So once we run this command, it's going to enter in interactive mode, and then you're going to supply the values there. So more of this later in the demo. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. So before that, I will start with the demo. So 1 second, let me just share my screen. Share a screen. I can't share my screen.
Can you try now? I haven't seen right now.
There you go. Yep. It's just a delay. Okay, I could see it from here if it's already shared.
Yeah, Mary, we can see your screen.
Oh, you can see it. I can't see it. All right. Yeah. So, all right. So we're gonna download the template from Anypoint Exchange. Can you see the oh, I still think. Can you see the endpoint exchange window? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So, yeah. So assuming that we've already published the API template for, yeah. So here I did the documentation. So what you could do is just open. Okay, might take a while. So do you have any questions? Yeah, it's taking time. So question from Abin, what is the project problem you're facing while using the project structure provided by MuleSoft? Why we need to follow a different? Is it like a client-specific need? I think my first question is, what is the project structure provided by MuleSoft? Yeah. And why we need to follow a different? Yes, it's a client-specific need. So it's based on your organization requirement. So from Abhinav, there are lots of other requirements like creating a location for .ov files, configuration files, and property files. You can standardize this. Is this a question? Sorry.
No,
All right.
Gave a revert to Abhin.
Yeah, it's an answer. Yep. All good. Okay. So now this is our API template. And then first, I'm just going to show you the so these four, actually these three are empty. So the global error handler, so if it's familiar, it's error handler or error handling of API kit. So when you scaffold your RAML, that would put these errors. So you just have to delete that, and then you're just gonna reference here. So the command is like error handler ref and then your API kit error handler. So you won't see any on error propagate from any of your XML files apart from global error handler. So you're just gonna consolidate it in one file. And then in other source main resources, you could add other packages based on your needs. So in YAML files, we've got local config. So these ports are for Cloud Hub. So if you've got common configuration, you can add it here. The auto discovery ID, the reconnections, parameterization, everything that you will need to parameterize across your APIs. You could put it in your YAML file. And then we've got the common dependencies as well here. So in your POM, so you got a group ID here. That's your business organization of your endpoint platform. And then you have to add this line to include the empty directories. And then this is the munit test coverage. So I just give example like at least 75. So in our case, we standard it to 75%, your application coverage. So if you're gonna wonder like how you're gonna enforce this required application coverage, you could set up your pipeline to check these properties. And if it's not 75 or if it's lower than 75, then you're gonna fail the build or you won't be able to release it. So yeah, so for now, I just set it to false because it's gonna fail. I haven't done my munit, so just switch it to true if you're ready to run the coverage. And here are the common dependencies of yeah, common dependencies, and then just update the version. So you're gonna see that. Just right click here, and then manage modules. And then if you see a blue color here, it means that there's a new version of one of those. Yeah, so like that. So there's a new version there. Just apply that. Then yeah. Oops. Cool. So, and then in Mule artifact JSON, you could yeah, you could define the properties that you want to mask in the runtime manager. So yeah, that's about the custom project. So now from our custom project, we're gonna generate our newly API project structure. So let me just drag this, share. Cool. All right. So here, this is the API template from my workspace. And then this is the archetype properties. So it should be the same level as the API template. So here we've got 3 placeholders that's not part of the velocity engine. So this is my custom holders, which I will need later for when running or when generating a project. So first step is to run. 1 second. Let me just open my So can you see my Visual Studio now?
Yes, we can see the screen.
All right, awesome. So we need to go inside the API template and run this command. So this is the first command that I showed earlier, which is create from project. And then it should you should specify the archetype properties, which is here. So just run this guy. Awesome. So here you will see that there's a target, and then where is that found? Target generated resources, and then source main resources. Yeah. So remember the archetype descriptor that I was telling earlier. So here we have to do a bit of tweaking to include the DWL's examples and schema, which are empty packages. So you're just gonna chuck in this lines here and save it. Cool. So I've saved it. Then now you're gonna navigate to this directory. Oops, sorry. There you go. And then you're gonna do a Maven install. So this will upload the artifact to your local M2. So you've got when you have Maven, there's an M2 folder. They go inside the repositories, and all of this will be there. Yeah. So now that you've uploaded it, next is the Maven Archetype Generate. So from here, you have to make sure that you're outside of API template. So I'm outside of API template, and then you're gonna run this command, Maven Archetype Generate. 1 second. Cool. So here, you've got the archetype group ID, which is your group ID that you've uploaded in your local M2, and then the archetype artifact ID and the version and the domain. So this is the so remember when you do Maven install, it's uploading it. So this line actually reference to that artifact that you uploaded in your local M2. And then in domain, I want to, I'm actually working on the API, for example, customers API, and then you're gonna have an API description that would be part later on of your POM. So here you have to take note that you have to wrap it in double quotes, otherwise it's gonna fail. So yeah, and then yeah, looks good. Cool, and then it will enter in interactive mode. All right, so group ID, it's mostly your company. So for example, com.com. So for the sake of the demos, I'm just gonna put com.fake company, and then my API name, and then just the default package. Okay, so if this all looks good to you, then generate it. Cool. So we notice that we've got project that's been generated here. So from here, we're gonna import this to our Anypoint Studio. So this will be your new API, your new API project structure. So we're just gonna import this to Anypoint Studio. I'm just loading the Anypoint Studio. Share screen. Okay. Oh, second. Cool. So let's jump back to our Anypoint Studio. So in here, we're gonna import that project that we just generated. So from here, then you just have to copy the real name and finish. Yeah, so this might take a while because it's loading the dependencies and other stuff. So I'm happy to take questions while loading it. So start. Okay. All right. What is the difference between Maven Archetype and MuleSoft template? So the Maven Archetype we use to generate a MuleSoft API project template. Which is this tool where you have run the command? Oh, that's a Visual Studio. Ah, why are we using Visual Studio? Nothing, just my preference. Yeah. Because I don't think we could run a terminal in Anypoint Studio. Can we? No. So I wanted to see the project and the terminal both in the same. Cool. So not sure why this is still API template. Did we change it? Hang on. Let's see. Let's delete it again. Let's load it. I'm pretty sure I've changed it. Let's see. Over here. Oh, it's changing it. Okay. There you go. Right. Back to the questions. Yeah, any terminal you want to use, PowerShell, Git Bash. Yeah. All right. I think that's pretty much the questions. All right. So here, it changed the domain to customers. And then we've got the global error handler here as well. So all of the content that I've showed you earlier in our custom project that we use as a template, it's here already. So you don't need to configure these things. So in your POM, it actually changed the description as well, which I supplied during the interactive mode. And then I've got the group ID here as well that's been changed. Yeah, pretty much the content of the custom project. And then in Log4j, we've changed this to the name of our project. And the Cloud Hub we've got here as well. And then, yeah. So, yeah. So after this, then you're ready to go to do your Mule implementation. So that's about it. So, yeah. Can we go back to our slides, Jack, please?
Let me share my screen.
All right, so that's about it for the demo. So what are the benefits of having an API project template? So good. Next slide. Yep, awesome. Thank you. So first is we standardize. We love standardization of things. Second is we've got a pre-configured dependencies, so developers don't need to do that. And then we've got unified Log4j format for all our APIs. We safely hide the sensitive properties. So now that we could generate in a few clicks away the project template, the developers could focus on implementing the business requirements, which is more important, right? So it's going to speed up the development time as well. And it will enable developers to follow the best practices. So if you've got new clients in MuleSoft, this is really helpful because it's going to be difficult if you're just going to repeat yourself and explaining to them about these things. So yeah, that's about it for my demo. Thanks, everyone. Yeah. Over you.
Yeah, thanks,
Jack.
Mary, for the great session. So I will be continuing with the next session. So before that, anybody have so they can ping in the chat, you have doubts, right? So I can make you a presenter, so you can ask,
Farrell?
Yeah, Abhinav, I made you presenter. Could you please?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Jyoti. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Mary. So 3 questions with respect to this. The first one that I want to ask is, when you are doing the customization of Log4j2, that will be just helpful in cases of customer hosted environment, right? By default, because in case of Cloud Hub, the default Cloud Hub Log4j2 file will again overwrite our own custom Log4j2 file. So is that statement true? Correct?
So in customer hosted, I believe you've got a common log4j2. So it's like a domain log4j2. But in our Cloud Hub, we need to specify that for each API to be able to feed the logs, or to feed the logs to Splunk and Cloud Hub.
Okay.
Sorry.
So,
Correct me.
Abhinav, let me answer you.
Yes.
So, yeah. So, I got your question. So, you mean to say, so basically, we have defined a log4j, like Cloud Hub deploy appender in log4j2. In that case, Cloud Hub is already writing the log. And what will happen with that appender? Will this appender will again write the log? This is your question, right, Abhinav?
Jitin, I read it somewhere that as soon as we deploy our Mule application to Cloud Hub, there is a default log4j2 file that will overwrite our application.
Correct. I will tell you. I will explain. You are correct. Basically, it will not. So basically, what happens? So it will definitely override the log4j2. It will override the log4j2 from the Cloud Hub log4j2, right? If you don't want to do that, so what you can do, you can with MuleSoft, and there's an option called disable Cloud Hub login, right?
Yes.
So by default, you cannot see that option. So you have to raise the ticket with MuleSoft, and you can ask them like, I want to activate that particular option. Once that option is activated, you can click on that checkbox. So basically, disable the Cloud Hub log. In that case, the log4j2 which we have defined, that will work.
Yes. You need this when you're feeding logs to external tool like Splunk. So you have to raise a ticket to MuleSoft support to enable that checkbox in the runtime manager.
Another question that I have is, when we are working with this standard project, like one thing that I have recommended to my client is that we can use this template itself as a source code management. So can we have a progressive push to the exchange, maybe, like instead of just having a standard archetype, like a basic framework, can I do a progressive update? Like if somebody have created some new flow, then they can again save that flow itself or a new business logic and push that back to exchange, so that all the others have a standard application development. Will that be a right approach, or we should only go with archetype for the basic structuring?
You want to use the repository?
Yes.
Yeah. So you could check this API template to repository, and you could build a pipeline that will publish to exchange. Yeah.
Okay. I'll just rephrase my question. Maybe I'm not able to explain. So the thing that I want is, will the archetype file project that we create, it will be just a basic skeleton project that would be provided for all, or we can do a progressive development, like I can create some more business logic, again push that as a new archetype file so that later on developer can use? Will this be a correct approach, or we should keep it separate, like archetype standard and then SCM separate?
Yeah, you could do versioning, right, in endpoint exchange. So when you want to improve your API template, then apply the changes there and publish it to exchange. But when you mentioned about the business logic, you have to think about if you really need to put that in a template. So are your all APIs going to use that business logic? So if not, then yeah, you have to assess, like, if this part or if this piece of code we're gonna use across all your APIs. Other option is you could have a different project that contains the common business logic. So that would be like your domain project. It depends on the domain. So for example, you've got different services in your organization, and this specific service will use that business validation, then create a different domain project of that, and then package it as a jar, upload it to your Artifactory, and then use that as a dependency. So we're using that way when we're pulling logger, because we customize our JSON logger. Yeah, that's another option. But yeah, you have to think about if you really need to put a piece of code on your API template. It should be as simple as possible, as common as possible.
Okay. One last question. Like in your demonstration, you showed that we had an error handling as the part of our template itself.
Yeah.
I have implemented another approach, like in which I create the entire error handling as a separate jar file and add that jar as a dependency to our project. So
Yes.
what would you recommend to be the better approach?
Actually, we're doing the same approach as you, but for the sake of showing the file structure, I just put it here. So we're doing the same as you. So I've built a different project that where all my error handler is, and then package it as a jar. We uploaded it to our Azure Artifactory, and then we use that as a dependency. And then, but you have to include the imports, right, in your global configs. So you have to specify the files that has your global error handler. I mean, I could do a demo next time, but yeah. So this is just about the API template. I mean, yeah, it's more advanced of what you're doing. Yeah, it's better. So we're doing the same thing actually.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Please let us know, are you using any point exchange extensions for Visual Studio? What does that mean? No, I don't. So we can upload the template directly from Studio instead of Maven Archetype. We actually downloaded the template from Anypoint Exchange. And you could upload the template as well from Anypoint Studio if you want to add more features of it. So yeah, there's no API kit here with RAML. Because in that's very specific, right? So if you're going to upload a RAML, that would be a specific one. So I don't upload the RAML. So that would be the developer's responsibility later on once they've got this API project structure. Can you give a use case for JSON logger? Yeah, so the JSON logger, we unified our logger as well. So we put the JSON logger in, like what Abhinav said, I've put that in the Mule Commons project. So we're just calling that flow from the start. So we log the start of the transaction, and then we log the end of the transaction. So the JSON logger, we're not going to discuss in details the JSON logger here, but in logging in general, we have to log the entry and the exit point of the transaction. So yeah, you can download the JSON logger for free and then upload it or publish it to your exchange and then use it on your project. Well, there is one disadvantage over here. If you import as jar, think if there's a change in version, then you need to update that version on all your modules. Is that statement correct? Well, if you're gonna add a feature on your jar that's gonna be required for your project, then yes, you have to update the version. So maintenance-wise, yeah, you have to update the version there. But that jar, that's a commons project jar. So again, you have to assess as less change as possible. So what you're gonna put it there is it should be generic for all your APIs. So like error handler, API kit, HTTP error handler. So these are generic for all APIs. Otherwise, then I don't think it's worth it to put in the commons jar. Yeah, because you don't want to change it over and over, right?
Any other question? Okay, so I think we have done with all the questions. Yeah. So thanks, Mary, for the session.
No worries.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Your turn,
So
Jack.
yeah. So like now I will start with my session. So we will be talking about like how we can implement a GraphQL with a MuleSoft. First, we will try to understand like what are the different use cases for the GraphQL and how we can implement those use cases. So let me first go to what is a GraphQL. So basically, GraphQL is it's a graph query language. It's an open source and it's a free. It's a free. And basically, this graph query language is used for your REST APIs basically. And initially, it was developed by Facebook, and then it was publicly released in the 2015. So basically, in GraphQL, what you can do, like you can send the query to your REST API, and REST API will return those particular data. For example, like you have a API which was returning around 20-30 fields in the response, but your mobile application required only 4 fields. So why he will request for all the 30 fields? So GraphQL have that power, so you can request for that particular 4 field, and you will get only 4 field. Okay, so we will see that example. So REST APIs are powerful and they follow a resource-oriented and well-structured approach. However, when the data is complex, it is not possible to fetch all the data with a single request. It involves various operation routes to get a more complex. And GraphQL is very useful in such cases and the structured data in the form of graph with its powerful secure syntax, traversing, retrieving, and modifying the data. So what does this mean? So as I mentioned, like if you have a nested data, like if you have a complex data structure, if you have 100 of fields in your data, but your mobile application or your web application doesn't require all the field, so you can make use of a GraphQL to get particular fields, whatever fields that particular web application or mobile application require. Apart from that, GraphQL is capable of aggregating the data. So what does this mean? So let's consider if you have 3 APIs. I have an account API, I have a balance API, I have a transaction API. So the mobile application or web application or any third party want that particular data into a single call instead of calling 3 different API. So where the GraphQL come into the picture, where it can aggregate the data, it can call so basically the third party will send the request on the GraphQL API, and GraphQL API will make sure like it get the data from all the three endpoints or 3 endpoints, and it will aggregate the data and it will send back to the whatever client. So let me go to use case first. So let's consider the scenario. You have a REST API that return the 10 fields in the response, but web application requires only 7 fields, whereas the mobile application requires the 4 fields. Okay, so let's consider I have an API which returning a 10 fields, but my mobile application require only 4 fields and my web application require any 7 fields. My other client require 2 fields only. In that case, we can use a GraphQL is the one of the option which can be used. So client will pass the query. So I want this data. So GraphQL will call the API and make sure like it return only 4 field or only requested field from the client. So let me present this particular diagram. This will give a more clear picture. So let's consider my mobile application required ID, first name, last name in the mobile, whereas web application required ID, first name, last name, mobile application, email address, and the postal code. So the request come to the GraphQL API, and GraphQL API requested to account REST API. So this account REST API is returning field like ID, first name, last name, mobile, email, address, postal code, state, and city. So what we'll do, the GraphQL will get this particular response, and like GraphQL check, like I got the request from mobile application for this particular 4 field. So GraphQL will extract only those 4 fields and send it to mobile application, whereas basically from web application I got the request for the 7 field. So GraphQL will extract those 7 fields from this particular response and send it to web application. The next use case. So let's consider where you have to call a multiple REST APIs or want to fetch the data from multiple REST API. Each API will respond with the JSON payload. So basically what happens, I have a 3 upstream API. So basically GraphQL has to call 3 upstream API, account, balance, and the transaction. Okay, and has to aggregate the response and send back to the client. In that case, a GraphQL is very useful. So let me show with the diagram. So basically, this is my diagram. So basically, a client application has requests like this. I want account. In account, I want ID, first name, last name, mobile, email address, postal code. In balances, I want balance type and the amount. From transaction API, I only want ID and the transaction amount. So request will come to GraphQL. GraphQL will call all 3 APIs. Okay. So depend, like if we are not sending this particular transaction, right? So it will not call transaction. It will call balance and account only. But in case it required balance, it required account, it required transaction. So it will call all the 3 upstream API. So we get the response from transaction REST API. We get this response from balance REST API. We got this response from account REST API, basically. So we got the 3, GraphQL will got this 3 response. It will aggregate the response. And this is my final output sent to the client application. So it contains account detail. So it requested for few fields. It contains balance detail with requested field. It contains a transaction detail with the requested field. Okay, so these are the 2 use cases we will going to implement right now. So yeah, so any question on this particular GraphQL, so I can take initial questions. Yes, GraphQL can orchestrate as well, So basically, mostly for aggregating the data and all those things, not for you can definitely write the some minor business logic, but not. It is not recommended to write some heavy business logic. Okay. See, let's consider how can you do with the Experience API? Experience API is returning all the 7 fields, right? So one of the Experience API is returning all the 7 fields basically. So the other customer saying, why I will take the 7 field? I just want 2 fields, so I will take the 2 fields. So in that case, you have to add one more API which return 2 field and one API which return 7 field, or otherwise you have to write some logic. Depending on this particular client, you send 7 field. Depending on this particular client, you send 2 fields, right? To avoid such kind of thing, you can make use of GraphQL. GraphQL it's not a tool, it's a technology, it's a query language, right? It's kind of a language basically. It's a query language. Yeah, you can say that it's kind of Experience API basically. You can you can definitely implement this as an Experience API. But if you have an existing Experience API, right, on the top of you want mobile application only want 4 field, so you don't want to remove that particular layer. You can also implement on the top of your the experience layer. If you want to implement on the top of process layer, you can directly also implement on on the top of your system layer also. Yeah, see, I will recommend it it's no need, it's because GraphQL is doing everything for us, right? So it doesn't make sense to create all these particular layers, So as many layers you keep on adding the more and more layer, it will increase the latency, right? So to avoid that, you can definitely make use of GraphQL. So once you will see the demo, you will come to know the power of the GraphQL, So so we need to create one that we over it. So okay, yeah, you got my answer. What advantage will Graph instead of applying logic? See here, see if you are writing the logic, right? So in Graph, see you have to write a lot of logics. Let's consider in future any third customer is coming. He say I want only this particular 2 fields, right? In that case, you again go and change your logic, right? So you want to avoid such kind of thing, right? So in that case, the GraphQL can the request come on the GraphQL. It will say I want this particular 10 field. Next time the other customer want just 2 fields, so he will just send the query with 2 fields. So I don't want to do any changes in the code. If the customer will send the proper query, and depending on the query, we will return the data. Okay. So let me go to a demo, so we get the more idea. Then I can take more and more question. The first thing, recently somebody has developed a GraphQL router, which can be which can be used to implement a GraphQL. So let me first, you can go to this particular site, GitHub MuleSoft Labs GraphQL Router. I can copy this particular link, or I can copy from here. Okay. And then what I will do, I will create one folder. I can say that's fine. So now what I will do, I will clone that code. So first you have to build the code, you know. So I can say git clone. So I will clone. There's a somebody has developed a component so which can be used. So like we have a news like in future there will be the GraphQL manager will be introduced in your anypoint platform, you know. So yeah, so I have downloaded my code. So one thing you have to do the changes recently, you know, so you can edit this pom.xml. So basically this particular extension is not available in the parent. So you can change it to 1.1.3. I can save it. And you have to build it locally, you know, so you can build this as a locally. So you can say ambient clean install. That's it while code is building. Any other question? See, security in the sense like you have to define like, you know, so if somebody is calling the API, you can apply any policy, any kind of thing, you know, on the top of your GraphQL basically. Okay, so you can apply any security policies, you know, and any IP whitelisting, IP blacklisting, whatever you want, on the top of your GraphQL API. So let's wait while our project is building. So because we want to build this particular jar file on your local, otherwise you will not able to, you know, add the dependency. So let me show that. You can users in your M2, it might be a that's building it. Okay, GraphQL module. So I'm waiting for this to complete the build.
Till the time it starts, Abhinav is asking for one question, Jackie. So can we take it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Abhinav, you can go on. So basically, you can definitely do encryption and decryption. Okay, so that is also possible. You can encrypt, you can decrypt. So as I mentioned, like, you know, you can use any kind of algorithm for encrypting the data. If you are requesting something, you know, confidential, so you can encrypt and send it to. And GraphQL, you know, you can add the logic in that GraphQL API to decrypt it. So data level security is available. Even you can do the security at the transport layer using enabling the HTTPS and all those things. We don't want second client use field which they are not intended to? What? I haven't got a question, Arya. Can you repeat? Yeah, Abhinav, we can go with your question. Okay. So my GraphQL has been successfully built. The next thing I have to add one dependency. If you see, you have to add this particular dependency. You can copy this. Okay, and go to your form.xml. So you can say dependency. And you can say, I think it's 1.0.0. And also you need to add one more thing, that is a classifier, which is Mule plugin. And just format it. Okay, so save this. Okay, you can see it added a GraphQL dependency. Okay, you can see here it's also in your mule palette. So it has two things. So one is to route the request to the correct endpoint, and the other is like a GraphQL field resolver. So basically, it is basically tell what are the field requests by the client. So it will return those particular fields to the end client. So we will see those two components. Before that, I want to show you something. I have like system API already deployed on my Anypoint platform. So let me first show you those things. Okay, so I have this particular API which is already deployed. Okay, so let me show you. I have three endpoints. So one is like let me say account. It's accounts. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got this particular response. I have a balance API also. I got this particular response, and third, I have a transaction API. Okay. So now my requirement is that basically mobile application want ID first name and last name. Whereas like web application want all like ID first name, last name, address, and phone, website. Like, so how can I resolve this? The first thing, we have to define a schema for our GraphQL. So what you can do, you can create one folder under source means resources, saying new. So basically, first thing you have to create a schema. So you can say schema. Okay. So once you have create a schema folder, under that you can create one file which is new file. Schema.graphqls. Let's say finish. Under that, I want a schema of type query. So I can say schema. Under that, I can say query of type query. Okay, this is the first statement you always give when you are defining the GraphQL schema. Second, you have to define this particular type, that particular type. So I can say type query, curly bracket, close. I can say tab. Then I want type account. So basically, account you can search like you can mention a primary key which is ID of type string. Then you can close this particular account, and then you can say this is of type account. So now we have to define the fields in the account type. So you can say type account, leave bracket and start. So let me see all the fields. Let me copy all these fields which I'm getting in the response. I can paste it here. You can say tab. I'm defining my schema. So these are the fields contained. Let me remove all this. So I have to tell ID of type string. Okay. Then the first name of type. So you are defining your schema basically. So always give the space between this. Then you can say last name of type string. Then you can say address of type string. Then again, you can define the type, all the types. So this is how what I've done. I've defined the schema of type query. And the query, I told like, I want to search account on the basis of my ID, which is of type account. Then I define what are the fields in the type account. So these are the things you need to set up and just save it. Okay. The next thing what you have to do, you have to do the GraphQL config. So basically like whatever connector configuration we do it, right? So we have to do the GraphQL config also. Okay. So let me define the GraphQL config also. So basically you can go to the global element and you can define a GraphQL config. So go to global element, say create GraphQL config. You can give this as a name like mule. You can give any name, GraphQL, and you have to tell your schema. So my schema is at the class path of location, schema folder, schema dot graph ls. Okay. So I have just give the path to my schema. Okay, just say okay. Let's wait. So my GraphQL schema has been defined. The next thing what I will do, you have to define a router. Basically you have to define a router, GraphQL router basically. So you have to define one endpoint for your GraphQL. So what I will do, I can drag and drop a HTTP listener here. Okay. So in connector configuration, I will keep everything as a default. I can click on this and I can give this HTTP listener as a path GraphQL. The next thing, I will drag and drop a GraphQL router. So basically it will route the request, depending on what are the fields we are getting in the query. Okay. So you can keep the expression and here you can give a payload. So basically my query will come as a payload, right? So I mentioned this is as a payload. These are the settings you need to do. The next thing, I will define a graph query field resolver. This is very important. So let me check the router first. I have defined everything rightly. Yeah. So let me field resolver. In field resolver, so basically this my field resolver is for accounts. So basically if you see schema, correct? Where is my schema? So in schema, if you see, what is this account? So I want to retrieve account. So basically this route is for account. So you need to tell, you need to define a field name. So in this field name, you will go with account. You can define the account. What I will do, I will define one logger because I want to show you something. Logger also. In this logger, I will say request for account. Then I will use one execute scripting. So I want so basically you will send the query language, right? In this query language, if you see, I want to retrieve this ID. I want to retrieve this particular ID, ID, this primary key, because because when we call the upstream API, we want to send that ID in the URI parameter. So what you can do, you can use the Groovy scripting. So let me drag and drop a script, execute script. Sorry, it's execute. Under that, what I can do, I can write this code, payload equals to, and I can say params. So I will define one variable called params. Under this param, I will read all the attributes. All the attributes coming in the GraphQL using attributes get arguments. Whatever parameters is coming, will get read from here. So these are the settings you need to do. This is the way you can read attribute, basically params attributes dot get arguments. So here in my GraphQL, I will receive the ID, right? So I can read using this. So okay. So next thing, I will use HTTP requester. I can drag and drop HTTP requester. One thing I forget to change it. Basically, you need to tell the engine also, here. So sometimes I have some issue with my particular thing. I can say Groovy. So the error should go now. Now HTTP requester. So in HTTP requester, what URL we want to fetch the account from the system API. Correct. So where is my system API? So this is the URL. It is available in the cloud. I can say this URL. And instead of account ID, I can say this is my URI parameter. Correct. So I am defining this particular in this URI parameter. I can click on this plus sign. I can say account. Here I want to read the ID. So basically what we have done in Groovy script, we have saved it in the payload of type param. Payload in the attribute called param. So basically payload dot param dot ID. That is how you can read the value of your URI parameter. Not read the value, but basically that is how you can read the value from your query basically. So let me check if it's given the params or param. Let me check. It's params. So I will change it to params. One more thing, like there is some utility provided by GraphQL, that is the GraphIQL. So basically, it's kind of GUI, it's kind of web application provided by GraphQL, which can be used to test your GraphQL API. So for that, I have index.html. I can copy this particular page, and I can paste under source main resources. Then I can use one more HTTP listener. Okay, under this HTTP listener, I can I can define a base path and all those things. So I can say this is my graph IQL, and I can now I want to pass that particular HTML template. I can drag and drop pass template, and under that I can say where is your location? It's index.html. Then I can say set payload. This is just for testing purpose. Even you can use the Postman and all those things for testing, but that's better. Like I can show from this particular utility. So these are the things we need to do. Let me save this and run the application. Before that, till application is running, if any question. No, now. So basically, Arya, like you don't have to tell. Like there's only one solution. Like you don't have, you have to provide the query to client. So you can provide the different query to the client. You don't tell all the fields to the client. So to one client you can tell. These are the fields you can access. One of the client. You provide the query to them. Yeah, definitely. This feature will definitely come in the upcoming API GraphQL manager. So in that case, it will definitely taken care. So where like depending on your client ID, whatever, you can assign the fields to the client. So there will be GraphQL soon. But for now, you need to give a query to your client. You don't tell all the fields to client. These are the fields we are returning. So if that particular, if you want to restrict to that particular client for 4 fields, so just give that query with that 4 fields only. That is how you can restrict right now. Otherwise, you need to add some business logic and all those things. So I mentioned like GraphQL is not for that business logic, right? So I'm waiting for my application to run. When my application will run, so I can start HTTP localhost 8081 graph GraphQL. Still application is starting. So guys, let's wait while application is starting. Any query before that, if applications, it will come. And I'm going step by step, Naresh. So I will tell you, how we can do it. So it's still like I'm just doing the first demo. There are 2-3 demos remaining yet. So just wait for a few minutes. So I will clear that also. So I'm waiting for my application to start. It's taking some time. Okay, the application is deployed. And let me open that GraphQL page. So this is my GraphQL page, So you can see that. So it's a very good utility. So now I want to test the account, So basically, so this is how I pass the query to my GraphQL API. So I just want first name, account of type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is my ID. I want first name, last name in the account type. So let me send the request. So yeah, I got I don't know why we got null 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me check. The request for account is fine. So let me check why I got the null. It's parents.attribute.get arguments, which is right. Okay, so let me check in request. Accounts.account ID. And in URI parameters, account ID. Yeah, I think I forget something. Transform message. Yeah. Okay. So basically, you have to convert this into Java format payload. Let me save it again. Let's wait while it's deploying it again. So you can see that at least we got if I put some other field, so let me check what are the different fields available. If I put website, so if I send the request, it's deploying. Maybe let's wait while it's deploying. Any question till now, till application is deploying? I'm not sure. Okay, let me run it again. So guys, like you can use this particular link, to download this. So it's developed by Juan Cavaluti. So it's the only router which is available right now. So you can make use of this. So let me check. Application. And also, like one of the use case where you can use the GraphQL for sorting also, for sorting of your data basically, So I will tell you how we can do that. So there are three different things we will see. So one is for sorting, then aggregating, and then minimize the number of field, for the depending on the customers. Yeah. See, it can be based on resource, like and it can be based on client. So it depends on client. The client can send any kind of query, So the one client can send XYZ query, one client can send other query. I am showing that, So I'm waiting for my application to start. Yeah, it's got deployed. So let me send the request. So I got the data where you can see account, first name, last name, the website, If the other customer say, I only want the first name and last name only. So you can send like this, So you will just get the first name and the last name like that. So there are few customer want all the fields like controls. Let me put more fields. So you want like a phone and address also. Where it's gone. So he can say phone, and say address, and you can say request. Apart from that, I told about we can do the sorting. That some customers say I want first name and the last name at the end. So in the query, he can do like that. In the query, he can send the first name and the last name at the end. So depending on like how you send the request, you will get the response in same way. The first name and the last name at the end, basically. You can see that. So you can do the sorting also directly. Now I'm going to other use case. So what we have discussed now. So we have discussed the one of the use case where like mobile application request for different data, and like web application can request for not different data, like different fields. So to the GraphQL, the next case we will going to discuss this particular thing. So what we can do for that? So let me show you that also very quickly. So what we need to change the schema first. So we need to define the type for balance as well as type for transaction. So I can go to schema.qls. Okay. Then I can define a type called balance. So I can define a type called balance. Type of balance, I want a field called balance type of type string, and I also want amount is of type float. Okay. And so we will just see the balance right now. So now how can I use the balance here? So I can say balances. This is of type balance and it's in array. So like that, you can define that. Basically, you can define the balance type of balance into the array. You can save this. Then you need to define a resolver. So basically here again I can use a graph query field resolver. Okay. This time I want to define a field name. So my field name is balances. I can say logger. Request for logger. Then I can use execute. Okay, so this is very important. So in execute, I can write my engine as a Groovy. Here I can say payload. I'm trying to read a data by attributes. So I can say payload. Then I can say params, comma. You can simply say attributes to get arguments. In this case, what will happen? We have to define the source. So this time, like in the first case, like we get the ID from this particular arguments itself, right? But in the second, in the child, you get the ID from the source. Okay. So for that, you can say source. You can define a variable of type source and say attributes dot get sources. So I want the data from the source. Basically, for this, the source is account. So now in account, we got the ID in the arguments, right? But in this particular, we can read the ID from the get sources. So basically, it will read the get sources will also read the argument from the source, from the account, basically, So I will show you that how we can. So that's the one thing you need to do. So you can use get source. It's get source, and you can close this bracket. Next thing, now I have to define a requester. I can say requester. In this requester, I will give a balance URL, which is like this. Copy this URL. I can go to requester and go here. Now I can make this is my query parameter. Sorry, URI parameter account ID curly bracket. You can go to your URI parameter. You can say plus. Here you can say account ID. Then you can say payload dot source dot ID. That is how you can define a URI parameter. You can read your that ID using source. So this time we have picked from the source basically. So now next thing, I have to transform a message. I need to transform the message into Java. Then I can simply say payload. This is the flow we have completed for balance. Let me save the request, save the application. So I'm waiting for application to redeploy. That is redeploying. Okay, the application has been redeployed. Now what I can do, I can use that particular utility. Let it's redeployed. Yeah, it's deployed. Then I can go to this particular, then let me send the request. Say I got the data, but I haven't got the data from account balance because I haven't passed anything in the query. Also, one thing you will notice, even we have defined a two resolver, right? One is for balance and one is for account. The request will never go to the this balance resolver. You can see I have added one logger here, right? So which can tell so request will never go to particular. So basically, if you say request for account, but it is never gone to the balances because we haven't like requested for balance fields, right? Now what I will do, I will add it for the balances also. I can say balances. Under balances, I want, let me name, I want amount. Let's see, I want amount. Okay, it's amount only, right? Let me request this, send the request. Okay, what is the error? I think I have done some mistake somewhere. should be attribute.get sources. Let me check what mistake I have done. I think it's mistaken attributes. So what is the error I'm getting? Let me check. Just give me a second. I have one file. Let me check there. I think some mistake has been done. It's sources or source. I forget that. Give me a second. Or in transform message, it's fine. Or let me check. Balances amount, which is right. URI parameter payload.source.id, which is also correct. Just give me a second. Let me go to my GraphQL. I think it's the sources. Account/account ID, which is a fine payload.source.id, which is also correct. Yeah, it's there. Yeah, we have done it correctly. So let me see the error. Let me check this particular GraphQLs. Amount is float. Let me check. It's correct. So let account/account ID. It should work. Let me balances amount. Let me check that. Let me change it to get sources. I think it's get sources, I think. Let's save it. I got the problem. It's triple T. I think it's we have done the spelling mistake here. Okay, it's a double T. Okay, so we have done this mistake. Okay, yeah. So we got the problem. So let me save the application. It should redeploy it. So I used the spelling mistake like A triple T. You know, it's a attribute spelling is ATT.
Good spotting.
Yeah, it's very difficult during live demo to spot these mistakes. Yeah, but hopefully, you know, we have find it out the error. Yeah. So now my application is deployed. I can quickly test it. So you can send the request. I think we got the balance. See, no. So if you see this time, we have sent the balance, right? So in this case, it will call the balance resolver also. If you see request for account and request for the logger, yeah, it's a balance only. So it's a like message pro. So it has request for the balance as well as the request for the account. Now we will see the third thing, a transaction one. We can go to GraphQL again, and like we can start defining our type transaction. Okay, you can see curly bracket. So type is of small. Then you can say I want transaction ID of type string. Then you want description of type string. Next thing I want amount of type float. Currency of type string. The last one is like transaction date of type string. Okay, so I define that. Now I can use here transactions. I can say transaction. So I don't do the spelling mistake again. I have to be careful here. So transaction. Now I can save this. So my GraphQL schema file is ready. Now I have to define a resolver for this transaction. So I can say GraphQL. GraphQL field resolver. I can put it anywhere. And here I can say a field name is a transaction. The next thing I will again use the logger. Here I can say request for transaction. Then I can use the scripting execute. It's again a child flow. So we will read the ID from source. So you can say payload equals to square bracket params to say attributes dot get arguments. Then you can say source attributes dot get source. Okay, so this is what I have to define. Here I can say go to v. Then let me check the spellings again. Source attributes, which everything is good. Yeah, this time request and drag and drop a request component. Under the request component, I want a transactions. I want to call a transaction system API. So this is my transaction system API. I can copy this. Okay, and I can paste it here. I can make this as my URI parameter account ID. Copy this I can go to URI parameter. I can add, and I can say tab payload source dot id. Then finally, I can transform message into Java. So you can say Java and say payload. Let me, I think we are done here. So we are completed with our flow, all these use cases. So let me test it and let's wait while it's redeploying the application. Balance type. I also want, can change my query. I also want amount as well as balance type. So let me, application, I think it's just now deployed. Yeah. Let me send the request and let's see what happens now. So we got balance type and balance both. Let me check what happened. What is the behavior? So what happened? The request has gone to account resolver, request has gone to balance resolver, but request haven't gone to the transaction resolver because we haven't requested for the transaction. So it will never execute the transaction flow. So now I will send a transactions. I want a transaction ID as well as I want amount. I just want two fields. In transaction, I have a more fields, but I just expecting a two field in the transactions. I have many fields, but I want a just two field. So I got only two field, transaction ID and the amount, right? So even if you see it doing the aggregation, it is also providing the field which we want. Even it also giving the result in the way we are sending the field. So in the way like we are sequencing the field. So basically we want first name, the last name later instead of the first. So they are sending at the last. So we are doing three things. One is sorting. Then we are actually getting the requested field, and third we are doing the aggregation of data. So you can see that. So that is why GraphQL is very, very useful. So this is how I have completed with my GraphQL demo. Any question, anything, I can take it now. Yes, you can use you can use this because whatever argument you will save in the params, right? It gets saved in the params. So you can use payload dot the params and dot whatever your header name, or you can use that. Okay, so because it will take all the arguments, no? So you can make use of that. Yeah. So any other questions? So I think we have done with this particular thing. So yeah, Mary, you can ask the questions, so we can start with the queues also.
Hi, Jack.
Hello?
Yep.
So you have prepared the three questions,
Yeah,
right?
I'm
So we
just
can
gonna,
start with the queues. So you can
tell it.
see the screen.
Just gonna say it.
So guys, let me stop sharing first. So guys, when Mary will ask the question, so I will say go, then you give the answer. The person who will go, give the answer before I type go, that will be not considered.
So Jitendra, I have one question. Can I ask? So Jitendra, I have one scenario in GraphQL. Let's say, in the request side, you are requesting parameters, and you have put, random parameter, and it is not available in the, let's say, system API. Then in that case, do we need to handle that error in the MuleFlow itself, or GraphQL connector will be able to handle it?
No, GraphQL will return with the null data if that field is not present, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So let's consider you have already defined the schema. Okay, let me do one thing. I put this particular field. Okay, this field is not available, right? So let's send. It will give that particular field is not available in that schema. So you have to define in the schema basically. If the field is not available in the schema, it will throw the error.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, man, you can go with your questions quickly.
So for my first question, which file are we referring when we say archetype descriptor?
Can you share your screen and we have to provide the 4 options.
Oh, do I? Oh, okay. So it's multiple.
Yeah.
Multiple choices. Okay. 1, A, poem.xml. B, archetype metadata.xml. C, archetype.properties. So after your go, Jack, right?
Yeah, I want 3 people from them.
It's B.
So it's B, right?
Archetype metadata.xml.
Let me. So the first name is Suvidya. Second name is Satish Kumar Purshotam. The third name is Archetype Metadata, right? Not
Letter B.
Simardi Bhatia. Can you go with second question?
So, what else? So where do we publish the template? That's easy. You don't need multiple choice.
Options?
See?
Okay. So let me. You can go. Yeah, that's fine. Like, you know, yeah. So I can take the 3 name.
So the answer is AnyPoint Exchange.
Ish.
Yep.
So I can ask one question. So basically, who has developed a GraphQL? Can you? Shura. So I will not take the name 2 times. So it's Apina is already done. Raj Seeker. Third is Sivaram. So yeah, we got the 9 names. So we will select the 3 people out of this. Okay. Let me use the. I will share my screen. Okay. So I got all the 9 names. Let me share my screen quickly. Yeah. So guys, like, you know, so we have this 9 people: Suvodhya, Satish Kumar, Simardi Bhatia, Divesh, Abhin, Sriya, Ishwara, Rasikara, and the Siva Ramakrishna. You know? So let me spin up for the first winner. So it's a Suvidya. So Suvidya, can you ping your email ID? So Suvidya, you can ping your email ID. So Nitish, can you collect the email IDs?
I'll do that.
The second winner is Abhin BT. Let me go with third one. So it's Raj Seeker Reddy is the third. So congratulations to all the winners. Okay, so congratulations to all the 3 winners. So now the things like like anybody like interested in upcoming meetup for any speaker for any topic, he can reach me out or to Nitish. So you can reach any one of us. So with your topic and like if you want to be a speaker, any suggestion for the this particular meet, any topic you would like to discuss in upcoming meetups. So like Nitish, can you make everyone as a presenter so we can take the photos? Can everybody on the camera? So guys, I'm sharing the code of the this particular thing. So it's available on GitHub. So I'm just pinging the link. Yeah, Siva, everybody, can you on your camera? So I think you make the presenter to everyone, right? Nikhil, can you on your camera? Siva. And guys, like don't forget, like you will receive the mail. So it's very important for us, you to give the feedback, true feedback. If any, if you want us to improve, or like if you have any suggestion for future topic, you can like give during the feedback. So please make sure you give the feedback and like have an opportunity to win the $50 voucher. Hi Francis.
Hi, how you doing?
You are on mute.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, hi. How are you?
Where is Shiva?
I guess
So
I
can you
gave
switch
the
on the
presenter
camera?
mode to everyone.
Switch on the
If
camera,
anyone
everyone.
is missing, please let me know.
Come on, guys. Don't be shy. Show up.
Yeah. It's really good to see everyone here. Okay, Dipesh, as
Okay.
you said, I made you. Please check once.
So guys, anybody want to be a speaker? Francis, you want to be
Could
speaker
do, but I'm
for
already
upcoming
offered a few other
meetups?
places.
Like not in
Oh.
December, in the month of Jan or
Maybe,
something like
maybe.
that.
It is January.
I will reach.
Okay.
I will reach you out through LinkedIn. Yeah. Nikhil wants to do right one more session as a speaker. Yeah, I will keep one session for you also as a speaker.
Yeah, sure, Jitendra. And what happened to Shiva?
Yeah. So let me